Electricity is the phenomenon where rubbing two different materials together, like a balloon and your hair, makes each item somewhat sticky. This effect was discovered around 2,500 years ago by a Greek guy who, for some reason, was rubbing a stick of amber with animal fur and noticed that it would leave a slight attraction to each object. If you've ever taken an introductory physics course, then you probably already know this, but for everyone else, electricity is a relatively obscure phenomenon. Right? No, of course not. While static electricity was the first property to be discovered, electric charge is a deeply fundamental property of the particles and fields in our universe. And here on Earth, it is utilized to serve the entire world's power needs, act as the logical fluid to drive the billions of electronic computational devices around the globe, and is an integral part to animals' nervous system and life in general. This makes electricity a great case study to illustrate the point that the context in which an idea is discovered can be very different from the reality of the idea itself. This is all I could think about when I talked with Lupe Fiasco, a Grammy Award-winning philanthropist, storyteller, entrepreneur, artist, teacher, researcher, rapper. He is spending the upcoming year at MIT as an MLK Visiting Scholar to explore the academic frontier of rap, as well as teach a course on it in the spring. I was lucky enough to hear from Lupe about what his plans are for the next 10 months, and I felt a strong sense that, similar to electricity, rap's true nature is significantly deeper than its discovery point. In technical terms, Lupe has described rap as an intrinsically rapidly evolving, lossless data compression algorithm, built off metaphor, metonymy, and personification, all connected through cadence, and has established an educational guild called SOSA to formally teach linguistics, semiotics, computational and cognitive sciences, among others, to fellow rappers. Lupe talked with me about his purpose of being at MIT, his thoughts on the integration and interplay of rap and academia, and also entertained some of my random questions, like if it's possible to rap without using spoken language. As with much of his music, I feel as though there were many things Lupe discussed that I didn't completely understand, even after 3 hours, and I look forward to coming back to this conversation in the coming months and gaining an even deeper appreciation for Lupe's words. Probably a good place to start would be, you're at MIT, and could you just tell me what you're doing here?
Hi, I'm Lupe Fiasco, a.k.a. Wasalu Jaco. That's my real name. I am a MLK Visiting Scholar and Professor here at MIT for 2022-2023, teaching a class, doing research for all of the tenure, and then teaching a class in the spring.
And you've been here at MIT before, right?
Yeah, so I was here in 2021 as an artist in residence. And then prior to that, I was coming in and out like a ninja in the night, just speaking in different folks' classes, participating in different labs and stuff like that, mostly on the humanities and the computational poetics side of the buildings. But I've been coming here in various capacities for maybe like pre-COVID, maybe like 5 years or something like that. So little nice chunk of time, you know. This would be my longest time here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
you mentioned research in classes. Can you tell me what the research is about?
So I'm a rapper, right? And nothing else. No.
That's it.
But so for me, you know, I've reached a point in rap where, you know, the actual craft of it, I have a certain mastery of, and even in some capacities, a grand mastery of. And so for the past few years, for me, it's about investigating spaces where either rap isn't present at all, or in spaces where there's some type of connectivity, some type of relationship in some capacity. And in other spaces where it's kind of fully kind of fledged out. So you have like professors and researchers and different folks using rap as the main focus of their work, and they might come from a computational standpoint, you know. And so you had those kind of three buckets. And so for me, it was like, okay, let me explore all of those. Like I already know how to rap, so I know how to do that. Let me see what else I can do with rap outside of just rapping it, you know, outside of putting words together. Is there something to how you put thoughts together? Is there something about, you know, rap as speech as an extension of evolution? Is there something about rap being a special version of speech that maybe impacts evolution in a different way, right? And what does that look like? And then what does the research look like to do it? And then how valid is the research? So there's been like this, kick for me to like get in spaces, in whatever the space is that feels completely foreign to rap, and then see how rap fits in there. Even if it boils down to like there's nothing here that relates, but maybe you can write a rap about it, So it's even in that, let me pick up some terminology, some concepts, and kind of relate it back. So it's actually been fruitful, So part of that journey coming to MIT and different institutions. So I'll be at Caltech, I'll be at Harvard, I'll be here just kind of like ducking around, seeing, talking to people. I'm here now, so it's proof like, oh yeah, there's stuff there. There's stuff for you to do in a long way, and maybe after this year, it'll probably be even more steps. It's probably deeper things. Yeah, so that's kind of the research piece. The class itself is about rap, so it's what is rap, how to do it, and here's all these other wild things that you probably didn't think about it as, from a guy who's done it for 20 years, half his entire life.
Yeah, kind of. So a couple of questions back to the research part. When you say how rap impacts evolution, could you say more about that?
So thinking of it, so the title of the, back up even a little more, started an institution called SOSA, Society of Spoken Art. There's a member or two floating around MIT on the low. Actually, my hosting professor is a member of SOSA, Doc IT. So SOSA was all about exploring, is this question, rappers know how to do it, but sometimes we don't know what we're doing. So SOSA meant to answer the what's, cognitively, from a poetic standpoint, from a computational standpoint, from a mathematical standpoint, theoretical, even commercial and other aspects of it, to really nail down the what we're doing. And so, SOSA has been around for like 7-8 years now, going on 8 years, I think, maybe. And we explore everything. And it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, what are we going to explore this year? So we decided to kind of have these year-long conversations on a single subject. And so this year's conversation was evolution, and so the title of the conversation is Rap as an Evolutionary Force, right? Question mark, parentheses, question mark, dot, 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 right? And so it was just like, okay, where do we start? Let's start with Darwin, let's start with, critics of Darwin, after that, then let's just hit all these rabbit holes. So we found ourselves like trading a lot of scientific papers, white papers, journal entries, books, this massive thing that has to do with evolution, and finding the parallels, and then once we kind of had a somewhat of a decent understanding of some of the conversation and some of the state of the art, it became like, okay, well, where do we fit in, from a speech standpoint, looking at speech as an evolutionary development over time in different species and different places for different reasons. And it's kind of, well, okay, humans kind of developed, this language in a certain way for certain use cases and utilities. We know rap like the back of our hand, and then it becomes, well, is rap like imposing, is rap influencing genetic expression in any particular way? Sounds wild, right? But you read a ton of papers about metaphor and
so you mean literal biological evolution?
Literal biological evolution, yeah. So not
metaphor.
Yeah,
not evolution of music.
Yeah, which isn't really metaphor, because it is still like evolution. I don't think evolution that occurs in a synthetic space is still evolution. Like It's still everything we do is an extension of the human condition. Mm-hmm. So because beavers, the same way like beavers, dams are considered an extension of their phenotype to a degree. So anyway, but it's real evolution. And that was even one of the catches, right? What we were talking about. I was like, and how to DJ turn into, it's like, no. We're not talking about cultural evolution. They have to think like, wait, maybe that still is valid as evolution, but it's biology, genes, gene expression. And it lands less on the genotype side. There's less kind of evidence as of right now, right, for that. But the phenotype layer of it, right? Like how these genes are kind of expressing for new behaviors and stuff like that is super, super interesting, right? It's weird because rap hasn't been around that long, so to speak, in the form that we know it as. And there's not a lot of data. The data that's out there in the studies that we have, they may study rap particularly to get a sense of what improvisation looks like, right? And so they'll use rap freestyling as a certain kind of like, okay, let's start with that as an example for a study and see how freestyling affects, or let's measure when people freestyle what's happening, in certain sectors of the brain and stuff like that. And so there's never been like a focused study, at least to my knowledge as of right now, of, looking at rappers across time, like follow a group over, 5 years, survey them properly, control and do all that stuff. So it's real kind of tangential at the moment, but the hope is like the conversation that we're having at the depth that we're having it will kind of inspire folks, at institutions like MIT to kind of really look at it, and other institutions, and look at it and be like, oh yeah, let's do that. What do we need to fund that study and put it together and make sure that it's correct and blah, 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 blah.
So in regards to what you're talking about here, what's the difference between rap and any other type of music?
Any other type of music?
Well, like, could you do, could you do these, you said rap as it relates to evolution.
Yeah.
Would you expect that to be different than if you just studied some other genre of music as it relates to evolution?
In certain parameters, I think the big thing is I think everything that we do affects our evolution, right? Sometimes terminally, right? By just completely obliterating the species, and then other places where, behaviors kind of get framed and then reinforced and then locked through various influences of cultural inputs, whatever. So I think you'll definitely find, like things that have changed or responded to all kinds of music, all kinds of music. I think what's interesting about rap is it's very heavily speech focused. What's distinct about it is there's a lot of talking. As you can see, I haven't been talking a lot, right? But there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of verbosity in it. And a lot of kind of the nature of it is this competition to be diverse. So it's almost RNA in its versus DNA, right? Where it's like it's constantly mutating, right?
Is that what you mean by diverse?
Yeah, so the diversity, so it's constantly mutating. RNA, you just take RNA viruses, for example, they're constantly mutating versus DNA, which is very stable, right? It's a constant like pressure to not do the same thing twice, right? So you're replicating, but it's replicating on a certain frame, but constantly like every time you come back is different. Even me as an artist, I never want to do the same thing twice. Like I don't want to rap in the same style. I don't want to use the same subject matter. I don't want to use the same beats. I don't want to use the same this. So there's a lot of diversity in it. And so what is all of that diversity that you're either listening to, right? Or, creating, how's that impact versus, just jazz standards, right? Where you're playing the same jazz record over and over and over and over again, right? Or with dance music, where it's the same BPM over and over and over and over again with the same kind of cliche moments and stuff like that. Cliche in a good sense, right? So there are like, there's big thick lines between musical genres, right? And I think the one thing that rap is unique at having and being is just the level of verbosity in it, like the level of vocabulary, the level of kind of linguistic diversity that's embedded in it. And so I think it has a closer tie. And it has everything that comes along with just music, and the impact of just music on cognition, the impact of music in the human kind of condition. So it has that going forward and all that entails. It's a more stripped down version of kind of musicality, but it's definitely there in terms of the beats. But that linguistic aspect of it on top of that, I think gives you like a double dose of kind of like potential for some type of, evolutionary impact,
Yeah.
maybe.
So just because you brought up this comparison between RNA and DNA, so I might be wrong because I'm more of a physicist still than a biologist, But I think the reason DNA is so stable is because it has like two strands. It has like a duplicate basically, and there's some error correcting code algorithms that can run. And RNA is a single strand, so it doesn't have this. Do you know, now looking back at rap compared to other genres of music, what's the driving force for rap being so diverse?
I think that it's kind of like its foundations was competitive, right? Yeah. And so when you're competing, and then so there's two. So it's a competitive, and then there's a complementary aspect to it, right? So the competing aspect is you're an MC, I'm an MC. We're gonna battle.
I am not an MC.
I know. We're your microphone controller right now, right? You're on this mic, so right now you're MCs, right? But I say that just as to set the example, right?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna meet up in the park.
Yeah.
And you know, there's gonna be potentially a circle called a cipher, and then you know, there's gonna be like a little beat going, whatever beatbox, and then you're gonna kick a verse, I'm gonna kick a verse, right? If I just kick the same verse you kicked, right? And when I say kick a verse, you're gonna rap a rap, right? When I say rap a rap, you're gonna speak this kind of like rhythmic, poetic, you know, refrain and phrase. If I kick the same thing you did, there's nothing special about that, right? I'm not gonna win the competition, right? Maybe I could if I did it with a certain like intention to repeat every line that you just said and then play with it and put different tonal pieces on it, right? But if I just did that, I'm gonna lose,
yeah,
right? So I have to kind of take in consideration what you said and then respond, right? Or if it's not more improvised like that, and it's more like I'm coming with a set of prepared kind of refrains, then it becomes I can't just I got to kind of build it up, right? So I know this one is kind of weak, but I'm gonna start off with this one. This is gonna be my middle one, regardless of what you say, right? This is gonna be my middle one. You know, then I'm a depending on what he says by the time we get to this third, you know, kind of back and forth, I got two options, and then you know, here's my closer, right? So those just by nature can't be the same, right? You can change the intonation, right? And the tone may be on the same. Maybe like, oh, he said, and I've done this before, but I still change the pronouns and prepositions to make it different, but use the same kind of bigger macro phrases, right? But they by nature, they have to be different to be competitive, right? They can't be static, right? So there has to be some dynamism in it. And that dynamism that comes from that competitive piece. The complementary side of it is more call and response to a degree, right? Where it's like, and this is probably more evidence for having both kind of like an RNA and then kind of like a DNA thing, a kind of a looseness and a lockness to it, is like call and response is I'm going to say something and then I need the crowd to repeat it, right? I'm going to give a command and I need the crowd to respond, right? And it's kind of chasing that compliment, you know, that becomes like, okay, we're gonna train a behavior and kind of create a groove.
So it's like a highly recursive network.
Indeed, right? Even the recursion aspect of it is, and it's funny because recursion is gonna happen regardless, right? There's only so many words. And even though it's like there's infinite amounts, it's like there's infinite amounts of gibberish, right? But in terms of like a proper, respectable semantical kind of frame, it's somewhat limited, and there's diversity within that kind of frame, but it's still a frame, and you can fall back on the recursive because you know it's always going to be there, and then you're free to be as loose as possible, right? Because you know you're always gonna somebody somewhere it's going to make sense. Right, it's going to have some type of semantic, like impact, right, or validity. So I think it plays to your question. I think it plays in both, right? I think that the RNA is more expressed. I know we call it RNA, but I think that capacity of constant diversity, constant permutation, is more so in the playground. And I think one of the keys is because rap becomes locked in the technology space in terms of it, you have to record it, right? is going to be set in stone. You can't change it. It's literally mastered. I mean, it's locked in. We're done. You can't make any changes. And then this vinyl, this CD, this tape, whatever is going out, this digital file is going out into the world. And it's not going to be able to change. And the rappers, and so that's like the DNA, right? Within that is, it's kind of getting cellular, I guess. You have, the lines have to have, if you're really good, even if you're just good, it's really good, it's probably even too much of a bar for this. If you're good, then each one of those lines should have a different meaning or a different potential for meaning, right? And not in just kind of relying on recursion, but in an intentional way, right? Where it's like every line that I rap on this song that cannot be changed has different potential spinning in it. I call it spinning, right? So it's this constant spin of semantics, that this one line that I said has one layer of meaning, and then upon review, another layer, and then upon review, another reveal, and then that line is connected to another line. That line changes. When that changes, it also changes the meaning for this, and then so you have this constant kind of like spinning throughout the verse, right, and throughout the songs. And then when you listen to it and knowing that we're emotional, we change, right, throughout the day, in different spaces, different contexts. When you listen to it in this context, it's gonna have this meaning. And then when you listen to it in this context, it's gonna have that meaning. And then when you listen to it in this context, it's gonna have that meaning on a macro scale, right? I'm gonna work out to this, and that same song that I worked out to, and I'm gonna cry to it because that one makes me cry. And then this one, I'm gonna be so excited, and then I'm gonna have sex to this one this time, and then I'm gonna cry again on this one, you know. And it might be the same song.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's also that kind of that RNA on a macro, RNA trying to behave like DNA, right?
So I'm sure that you know that I can't believe I'm saying this to you, but like, you know that you are known for like these insanely deep lyrics.
I am.
God fucking damn it. Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, yeah. yeah.
Just out here getting roasted.
No, yeah. No, I'm just,
I know. But no, but the real question though is like, because there's just so many people like, you know, dissecting all the stuff you do, and it's not clear to me if like how the hell do you plan for that? Like, how do you, because I can't imagine that you go into it and be like, all right, like let me think of a line that is going to work for working out and have another meaning for sex and have another meaning for relaxing. Like how the hell do you do that?
I think we overthink us as human beings, that we're just these completely wild, like completely unpredictable, right? Like devices or I don't know, compilations of meat and matter and flesh and blood, right? Running around, and we just can do anything, right? And we really can't, right? Like if you really look at the range of what the human is capable of, even on its highest technical levels, I'm going to the moon, right? And all of the stuff that is required to get you there may be at some scale. Oh, that's extremely complex. Like they built this rocket and it has this thing, right? And it's like, it might be like, yo, the rocket was easy. You just get a bunch of shit that explodes, right? And you put it in a tube and contain it, and then you there you go, right? What's really tricky may be the guidance system, right? Which is super particular and needs to be super sensitive and stuff like that. But then the guidance system might only be valid to get you to low Earth orbit, right? Then it may need another system might need to kick in, right? So even these kind of systems become obsolete at a certain. They're meant for a very specific thing, meaning that their range is very constrained, right? So even if you look at the most high tech kind of human device, its range is still somewhat limited, right? And they said, well, if you just unleash, you know, you let a computer be a computer, like it still has a range, even if its range is its power, right? Like eventually that battery is going to run out, and then all that, you know, expansion is going to disappear, right? So I'm just using that as an example, not to get off on a tangent, but that like even the things that we make that may be considered like, oh, super high tech, like, but look what we did. It's like, well, you're still just solving an A to B, here to the moon. And it's like, don't minimize that. It's like, but that's That's what it is. Like we're getting from here to the moon on a place that you can't survive, right? So it's like, right? It's just like, okay, you go to a place that you can't survive in naturally, and you got to take all this shit and it's going to crowd. It's like, okay, I get it. But we're very limited in scope to a degree, right? Tons of potential, but still limited. You know, potential's not doing, right? It's what you could be doing, right? And then when you look at how much of the human kind of world actually has the capacity to do, then it becomes even more limited, right? 0.0000000000123 maybe, you know, of people who can actually do it. My friend who actually won the Limousin Prize here a few years ago. I'm an advisor on one of his companies. Runs a company called The Source. Makes drinking panel, makes solar panels that create drinking water. Go get your water.
Oh, this was zero mass.
Yeah,
water,
zero mass
yeah,
water. So Cody Friesen, right? He was like, yo, the ideas are easy. The engineering is where, you know, separates the shit from the fan. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you can have all these ideas, but if the engineering just like, no, right? And so it comes back to like, okay, we think that we're this big, but engineering proves that we're actually this big. And so that same frame gets mapped back to rap, right? Where we think that we're gonna like have all of this. You need to account for all these different circumstances, but it's really just a few. You know, it's like the main drivers. You know, sex, money, drugs, violence. You know, what else? Hyperbole. You know, to speak to that, I'm bigger than I think I am, right? And then there's other range, but you know, the emotions, you know, which there's a few main ones and then some blends. But it's really like on two hands. I can count. That's 10 songs. That's an album.
Right.
You know, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, I'm done. I rely on recursion to make sure that no matter what I say, it's gonna have a certain frame of like you know, meaning to somebody out there. And then my skill set fills in the gaps. Right? So it's like this unconscious at one point understanding of the human condition because I'm just speaking from my own humanity, and then it hooks. Then you like, what is that? Then you become conscious of what you're doing. So then you can sit down and put an album together very, very strategically, right? You've mastered all of the micros, right? So you know how to turn a phrase and travel a story and do all this other stuff and create punchlines and aha moments and blah.
And you learned that just by practicing it.
So some of it's practice, some of it's like formal training. So back to this thing that maybe this is my soapbox. To me, everything's formal. I don't believe there's any wildness, right? I believe we label things as wild that we don't understand, but everything can be understood, right? So, well, almost everything. But the majority of things can be understood, at least at depth, you know, at least an intermediate level, right? Definitely below the surface, right? And so all the training I did as a rapper was formal. You know, me studying this rapper to learn how to do this trick was formal, right? Me studying, you know, this rapper to learn how to use my voice like theirs, right, was formal. Learning that slow flow, that fast flow, this flow was formal. It happened in the streets, you know, it happened in my bedroom, you know, it happened, you know, at school, battling folks, but it was that was a formal training, just as formal of sitting down and reading a book on linguistic cognition, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, that's the what, you know? So I learned how to do it, the vocational over here, and then now I'm studying the what, and to me, they're the same. Sorry for hitting the mic. They're the same. You know, there's no wild kind of like, there's beautiful accidents, right? But there's also beautiful on purposes, right? There's also ugly accidents too, where you're like, man, maybe I should really learn how to do that instead of just, trying to magic it,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to ask, since you kind of mentioned it, what are some things that you believe can't be understood? So you said everything can be understood.
Yeah.
Almost. What's in that almost?
I always like to leave a little room. Yeah. One of my mentors, Tavis Smiley, I remember I went on the show and I was like, yo, I'm finna retire. And he's like, don't say that publicly. Always give yourself a little room to come back. So never even if it's in you, don't tell other people that, right? Just so you can have a little bit of room
Yeah.
I never left, because people start responding to that, So it's like, he's like, don't say that. Don't say that. So I always leave myself a little room for error correction, right? Like just a little bit of.
That's exactly what we do. So we have these giant, horrible oral exams here, and if you ever say like, oh, yeah, like this always happens, immediately a professor was like, does that always happen? And there's like some tiny little edge case that will fuck you. It's like, no, like there's like a 4-glue-1 diagram you can draw, I guess. So I think that's great kind of technique. So I think we're kind of getting into what you're talking about with your class. So you mentioned, to you it's all formal, and maybe not to you it's all formal. Maybe it really is all formal, and you're just the one that noticed that. But you're kind of here in, about to teach a formal class. Is that class for rappers or for people who are explicitly not rappers, or both?
So to draw like a parallel, like Sosa is for rappers. Like you cannot become a member of Sosa unless you're a rapper, right? And at rapping at a certain level, right? Because Sosa doesn't teach you how to rap, right? Sosa does, rappers know how to do it, but they don't know what to do. So the assumption over here is, there's people who don't know how to do it, right? But they may know what it is, which is the tricky part. So it's kind of flipped, right?
Yeah, right.
Where people probably know exactly what it is, right? Probably like, yeah, I just took a cognitive linguistics course. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I took a poetics course and blah, 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 right? So they might know exactly what it is, but they don't know how to do it. So it's a great opportunity to be like, okay, cool. I can show y'all how to do it, right? And then also, refresh memories, or this is the way rappers approach, kind of like Shannon's like law of entropy or whatever that's called, right? This is how we look at information theory, right? And this is how we would apply it and use it in our own space, right? It may not be the same. It may not be for the same. It might, to me, it's all the same results, but just know we're thinking about that too, right? So when you learn how to do it, don't think it's just like, oh, I'm on a street corner spitting my raps and look at all the raps that I got in my head. Like, hold on, homie. Like, we're still over here thinking about, surprisal and, how do we manage that, So the class is rap theory and practice. And so there's some rap theory, kind of similar to what we were just kind of going through. Like, this is just a particular point of view. And then there's a whole lot of practice, so let's whip out those mics, here's these beats, let's get to these raps, you know what I'm saying? Right. And let these raps and let the theory inform the raps. Then let's error correct. Let's let the raps inform the theory. Let's see if we can be consistent. See if these things really work. So for me as a teacher, I've taught karate. I've taught rap at Sosa. What we at Sosa we say rap is rhetorical, anthropological, philosophical structures. So that's taught that version of rap. For me, it's a student relationship. It's not a teacher-student relationship. Shout out to Paulo Freire and Pedagogy Depressed. It's I'm here as much to learn from you all just as much as I'm here to introduce you to some things that you may not be aware of, or reinforce some things that you were already aware of, right? So for me, it's less about command structure, top down, teach you, listen to what I say, right? There are moments where it's like, you do need to listen to what I say because I'm one of the best in the world and I do this for a living. So this isn't just some jackass up here. Like I'm leaving class to go perform and make some money, right? And there's other moments where it's, what do you think? You know, and I'm going to steal your idea and make a whole, no. But it is that dynamic for me. It's, you know, there's things that I don't know. So there's things where, as I'm putting my syllabus together now, it's that little string of like, do I really understand that? Let me see. And then the goddamn attic opens. It's like, you had no idea what you're talking about. It's like, well, let me not take that out the syllabus, but now I need to sign these 4 papers, you know, to really drive it home for myself in the process of building it. So that when we get to that point in the class, I can speak to it, or I can pull in the guy or gal who wrote that paper to really like break it down. So I'm not coming at it as a know-it-all in the full spectrum. But I do want it to be rich. I want it to be robust. I want people to get a value out of it, and a vocational value out of it, as well as to expand their kind of pre-existing thoughts and ideas about the subjects that they're based in, and that can be applied over here, right? And let's rise all boats, you know?
Yeah. So you envision anyone who's interested in rap taking this class, basically.
Yeah. Even people who aren't.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm constantly surveying, you know, so I'm constantly looking and taking notes. I want to see people who hate rap. Like, I hate this shit. Come in and hate it all the way through, right? And then continue to hate it on the way out, you know, in their final exam. And I'm going to give them a nice F. But no, like, I want all shapes of interest, even disinterest, you know, to get a genuine response, and then to see like, oh, how can I turn that, you know?
Yeah, so we're talking about this class. And when you and I had been talking, and I actually saw you mention it in some of your SOSA stuff, that you want rappers to maybe not be experts in it, but at least see coding. You want them to see physics stuff. You want them to see maybe calculus stuff. Like, why is that something that rappers should see? Like, why is that beneficial to them?
I mean, and this will get covered in the class, and there's already classes here that kind of speak to this. So there's a music technology kind of class that I think it might still be on the books. Definitely on OpenCourseWare and some other spot on OpenCourseWare for sure. But it's like music and technology, right? And it's recording, right? Music, no matter what it is a technological piece, right? It's a computational piece, right? You know, language is a computation, you know? It's a formula, right? It's, what is it solving? Social equations, right? Solving for X all the time. That's languages, right? That's what math is, you know, you couldn't have math without language, right? You wouldn't be able to talk about it, right? Or even the symbols.
Yeah, math is a language. Yeah,
it's very much
sure.
so. And when you want to record it, then it becomes a technology, right? So I think that technology, period, right, comes from recording, right? Putting something down into a memory and then trying to, you know, then the battle becomes preserving that memory, or resolution issues, or cryptography issues, or whatever it is. It's that's the nature of tech to me, right? You could we don't have to go down a rabbit hole, or maybe we can, you know, architecture and other things, which you can say, well, maybe not, maybe it isn't a language, but it is. Those beams need to speak to each other. Those joints need to speak to each other, right? They need to communicate, right? They need to be in communication in their angles, right? Because if they don't, this building's gonna collapse, right? And so one of the core principles that we teach at SOSA is called FUV. This isn't the secret side of SOSA, right? There's some secrets in there, but this isn't, right? So ours is FUV, is Firmitas Utilitas Venustas, which is pulled directly or indirectly from Louis Sullivan. Was it Louis Sullivan? I think it was Louis Sullivan. Yeah, I think it was Louis Sullivan. It was an architect, right? And he pulled it from it was the basis for his form follows function, right? Firmitas, utilitas, venustas is what inspired form follows function, right? Firmitas, utilitas, venustas is Latin, of course. So it comes from, was the Romans, right? But really came from the Greeks, right? And what it, and it's basically, if you do something, it has to be solid. It has to have firmitas. It needs to be useful. It needs to have utilitas, and it needs to be beautiful. It means it needs to have venustas, right? So you get these 3 layers that need to kind of be in communication. So salsa builds itself off of the language of architecture, right? Building things, building a verse. We call it verse design in salsa, like designing a verse. So it needs to have these fundamental kind of properties kind of attached to it, right? And what do you use as an analog to proof your work? That building, right? So you're proofing your linguistic work off of this structure, this architectural structure, right? That's how your things need to be communicated within each other. The angles of your verses need to be in a certain way, and the curves need to look a certain way, and they need to have a certain function, and and so it's a shape, right? Shape of your verses. So go back to the original question, because I went down the hole.
No, I was just asking about why it's broadly, why is it useful for rappers to learn about all this stuff?
Computation, got it. So the recording process is a technological process. So at one point, it was just pencil to paper, right? And you just needed to know how to write, right? You need to be literate in that sense, or textual in that sense, I guess. Not literate works. Then it became, okay, now recording is, in this microphone, right? Orally, you were recording in other people's brains, or you would memorize these things, right? So you're doing a natural kind of recording, the technology of you, right? Then it became a peripheral, right, or some type of prosthesis. Then it became like, okay, now you have to have a mastery of pencil, which is a technology, even if it's a stick in the mud, it's interface, these 2 things are interfacing, okay, technology, blah. Fast forward, now it's like Pro Tools, right? On computers, with all of this stuff and special. There's a guy there, and he's the only guy that knows how to fix it, or he's the only guy that knows how to use it. You just go in there and you go to the mic, right? A mic that you don't even understand how it works, right? And he's like, "Don't touch it," don't. Or you go to a show and you're like, "Let's perform," and they give you the shittiest mics that they have in the building. Like, they scratched up, dropped the whole thing. They give you the shittiest speakers that they have in the building, right? They're saving their special speakers, for, I don't know, Wayne Newton to come and perform at the coffee shop. But anyway, they're giving you the shittiest monitors. Yeah. They're giving you their shittiest technology, right? As the rapper, because you're ignorant of how to handle this stuff. You don't know how this stuff works. That's the assumption that I'm making, right? Yeah. I don't believe that to be true, but that's the assumption. The more you know about how these things work, just off that, even if you don't own it, just the more you know how it works, right, will give you a greater respect for it, and respect in a technical sense. Like, I know how to handle it. I know how to hold it. I know how to clean it. I know how to, safely package it and travel with it. I know what to do if something goes wrong. I know what it is, so I can troubleshoot, right? And make the time easier for everyone around, so it's not like, tell me what's wrong. You go to the doctor's office, tell me what's wrong. It's like, my elbow feels gray. And they like, what? Right? So
compared to knowing the anatomy and
yeah,
saying,
like,
my biceps femoris hurts.
Yeah. Like, I think I ripped my bicep, doc. You think that's versus like, oh, my arm has a boo-boo, you know?
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
we go from like my microphone has a boo-boo to like, I think the diaphragm in this is off, right? Or even as like, I think this needs a new battery. Like my vocal pack needs a new battery, right? Because it's clipping. And maybe having a new battery will solve that, right? And I just think it's to have an awareness of that at least initial layer of the technology that we're interfacing with, that rap was born into, right? They're like, the rap is, we study it and we do it. It was born like interfacing with technology, literally, right? In some cases, it was I won't call it a perversion, but it was a colonization of kind of technology, and then reworking it and retooling it to express a purpose that it wasn't originally meant for, right? So taking what was meant to be the noise or the suboptimal use, and then no, that becomes the main use now, right? And like, why is it suboptimal? Because it'll destroy the needle. But it's like, but I want to destroy the needle, right? So now I just need to get more needles, right? That's the song for that one, right? It's gonna destroy the record, right? Like I know, right? So I need to get more records, right? So there's that same kind of call and response of like, here's a tech, it's saying something. Okay, cool, it's calling to me in this way. Okay, I take it. I know you meant it to mean this, but RNA kicks back in. I'm gonna take it to mean this, and then I'm gonna spit it back to you, and it's gonna be DJ scratching. But now I need to invent and this is real story. So Grandmaster Flash had to like invent the slip mat, right? Where it's like, I need this secondary layer between the vinyl and the recording kind of the record kind of wheel, whatever you want to call it, that gear. I need something in there as a bushing to kind of just like, you know, make this slip on purpose, right? Yeah. So I can have more kind of tactility, I guess, or whatever he needed it for. But he created this thing to slip mat, right? That's from him looking at this tech, understanding it at a deeper than fundamental level, and then being able to manipulate it to produce a new thing, which became the sound bed of hip hop, right? And I think the more we know about that stuff, even in today's high tech stuff, right? The more we'll be able to kind of expand what we do. You know, right? We came in riding on technology's back. Let's keep riding it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Let's get into it. But let's know when the horse gets sick, to extend the metaphor, we know how to heal it, you know, or we know how to make it run faster. You know, we know how to take care of it and inspire it.
Right. Yeah. Understand the rules and then bend them.
Indeed. You know.
So we've talked about this a little bit before, and I'm really interested in this basically interface between rap and the, math, physics, that sort of thing, coding. What you described, I would say, is kind of explicitly helping. So like technology explicitly helping rap. So like you literally want to know, okay, well, there's a diaphragm that's going to vibrate and that's going to send some electrical signals. Like, okay. On the other side of things, so that's like hard sciences helping rap explicitly. On the other side of things, I see rap helping physics or helping math or really helping the people, but it's more kind of implicit. Like, I listen to you or I listen to like other songs, and it doesn't it's like you're not telling me how to solve these equations, but it's something about like getting in the flow and like getting in like the vibe. And now it's like, oh, okay, like I'm thinking differently, and like now, so rap and music in general is really helpful to sciences, probably like everyone, but just to be specific, sciences in kind of an implicit way. Like you're not like, again, like your words aren't telling me what to code, but kind of being in that state that I'm not able to get to by myself is like, okay, like now I'm kind of feeling it. And I'm wondering if there's a useful reverse relationship where understanding Newton's laws would be helpful to rap in the same kind of implicit way. Like you understand, you having an idea of like what's going on with inertia and momentum, or understanding, calculus and infinitesimal spaces, if there's any room for that to be helpful implicitly to rap.
I mean, I think it's room for it to help explicitly, let alone implicitly. I think you can't escape things affecting you and influencing you somewhat implicitly, right? Again, this kind of the gift that is recursion, right? I do think that there's, even if it's just as direct as I'm going to take Newton's laws and I'm going to rap about them, right? Or I'm going to take the nature of crystal epitaxy, right? Or I'm going to take I don't know, some other highfalutin kind of physics jargon.
I learned that word from you, by
right?
the way.
Epitaxy?
Yeah. No, falutin.
Falutin?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I wish it was epitaxy, but it was falutin, whatever.
To be fair, I don't know what that is. I was just too nervous to ask you.
Falutin?
No. I know what falutin is. I looked it up when I heard you say it. I don't know what crystal epitaxy is. I was going to look that up later.
They grow, they start with a substrate, and then they grow silicate on top. It's basically for semiconductor kind of
silicon wafer things.
Yeah, so it's kind of a version of that, right? Versus kind of maybe they still print on it. Maybe they still do the kind of lithography. I don't know.
For the silicon wafers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly. I know when they're etching, they do some sort of diffusion stuff.
Yeah. I seen it here. I learned that word here. Okay. So exactly. Walking through the halls of MIT, there's some conference on like epitaxy. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And immediately stopped, was like, no, don't just pass that by. Let's figure out what that is. And then watched a couple like YouTube videos on it. Was like, oh wow, didn't know.
No, that's what they say, and it's true. Like more than half the stuff I've learned here is just from walking around being like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Look it up. Like, oh, cool. But it's like endless. Like obviously, like I never fucking heard that before. Like, I don't know. Jeez.
So we're passing it along. I think even at that scale, right? Clumsily, I would call it vulgar, right? Just big, unapologetic. I'm gonna make a rap, about gluons, and that's just what the fuck is gonna be, right? I think that even if it's that explicitly, to be aware of the terminology, because at the end of the day, that's what rap is. It's terminologies, right? That becomes some kind of vector of influence and change, right? That becomes some type of, like meaningful, if it's done at kind of the highest levels of rap, right? And I think sometimes what you get is folks in a discipline. This isn't shade, because and I'm going to give you the reverse. Folks in a certain discipline that have a certain mastery of, or if not even a mastery, a journeymanship or journeywomanship level of grasp, they'll want to express in another field for the sake of play or for the sake of some type of novelty. But they're not masters in that other field. They're not journeymen in that other field. They're not even apprentices, because they're not training in it. They're amateurs, right, in it, which is fine. So the product that you get is very clumsy, right? So somebody's in, what do we call it? Somebody's in, I don't know, give me a field.
Nuclear physics.
No, give me another one. Somebody's in biochemistry, right? And they're like, I'm gonna make a rap about biochemistry, right? And they'll go find the easiest version of rap to do, or the most, I won't say cliche, but the most kind of like mainstream version, right? And then they'll try and map that into that. And it'll sound wildly whack, right?
Horrible.
Right?
Yeah. It just sounds like a second grade, like elementary school rapper, and just like, oh, this is fucking horrible. And I was talking to Lloyd about it, and I'm just like, yeah, dude, like, no one's fucking bumping these songs when they're going to the gym. Like, no, you listen to them because your teacher makes you, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it needs to be, if this is the highest dimension of this craft, this science, theoretical or hard, whatever, then in order to migrate it over to this other dimension, it needs to be communicating with the highest level of this dimension, because the highest level of this dimension is able to like have the capacity to stabilize it, right? To make it, you know, to keep the consistency, right, of what's required to communicate it, right? And there's some about operating on these similar dimensions, and why are they similar? Is because they're able to maintain all of that pressure and force, and you know, when I say pressure, I mean like intellectual pressure, right? Kind of intelligence quotients and stuff like that. But if it's this mismatch, it's gonna sound mismatched, right? And where's that mismatch taking place? Because you're a master in one field and an amateur in another, right? Yeah. So masters need to speak with masters, right? The flip side, the inversion of that, you know, and this is shade. This is shade. Take it as shade. This is shade. This is what shade feels like. The flip side of that is me, as a master of this craft, trying and an amateur, right, in biochemistry, right? So because there's this mismatch, I'm low-hanging fruit. I might just tell the story of the biochemist, right? And at the end of the day, the service that it provides to biochemistry, in a real sense, really just becomes very superficial, right? And it's like, I came to listen to this record as a biochemist to like, oh, he's building on a theory that I had, right? And he's using the heuristics and kind of like some of the micros of rap and what it's really, really good at doing linguistically. And he might solve this fucking problem set with this, right? But instead, it just becomes an autobiography of a biochemist. And there's like, oh, that makes me feel good. It makes it's inspiration. It's not didactic, right? Yeah. So does everything need to be didactic? No, but everything is didactic, right? It's just teaching you at a certain level, but you can't escape it. Like, it's gonna teach something, right? I would prefer that it teaches, like, if you're gonna do a rap about, if I did a rap about biochemistry, I want to be a master at biochemistry, right? And then I want to have a depth and understanding of it that when I rap about it, it is a white paper. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just an autobiography of, or to bring it back to Newton, it's not just an autobiography of Newton, right? It is breaking down whatever capacity, whichever one, his lenses, the work he did on lenses and glass and stuff like that, right? I want to know that deeply. I want to know about refraction. I want to know about all these principles of light, and et cetera. Then I want to write a rap about it, right? And in some cases, because master rappers are great at details and are great researchers, you could sit a master rapper in a room and give him a book on Newton, him or her, or them or they, in a room, and they'll come out with some, maybe not the whole thing, but they'll give you a rap that will solve a problem set, right? You give them enough time, you give them enough, you give them a goal, they'll figure that shit out, And I think the inverse could potentially be true for a biochemist. You give a biochemist enough, the proper time, goal, and here's the functions, and I need you to approach these functions the same way that you approach those proteins, right? And I need you to look at these nouns and these micros the same way that you look at those, you know, kind of picozoa and whatever. I think they pull it off.
I think, I don't know. Like I'd be much more confident in my ability to teach you deep things about physics than my ability to learn enough to get by on rapping. Like it seems like it would be easier for rappers to learn the hard science than for the hard scientists to learn how to rap and not be a total fool.
Well, that's because,
or is that just me?
No. It's revealing the elephant in the room, is that the hard scientists have been formally trained, formally institutionalized, and built in a certain way where they were meant to be learned. All these highfalutin fields aren't not meant to be learned, right? They're not secret societies, right? They want you. MIT wants you to learn nuclear physics, you know, and computer science, right, and epitaxy. Like they want you to learn these things. They're not like trying to trip you up or trick you or this, you know. And so they've created a path and some incentives for people to be completely devote their entire lives to teaching the macros and the micros of that field, right, till its completion. Is there still some? Is the amount of stuff more to be learned very, very tiny? Yes, right. People are hitting limits of their fields, right? And either they're waiting on another field to produce that material so they can then leap up to another thing, or they're waiting for like, you know, what is the superconductors and, you know, there's other things kind of before they can move on to the next thing. And so now it's just kind of like everybody just chill out. Just gonna learn all the shit, and then, you know, good to knock on the door in maybe 10 years, and they're like, we figured out superconductivity. Let's go at scale. Let's rock. Yeah. And it's like everybody's like, oh shit, right? Rap is a little bit different. Rap has never had institutional training. It's never had vocational training in a formal way in an institution, right? With certain rap, there's no pensions in rap. There's no retirement plans. There's no tenure. There's none of that shit, right? It was built upon like, when you lose all the way, goddammit. There is no second chances, right? Like you're finished, right? And the recording industry, same way. Like they don't like, when you look at a recording contract, there's no pension language in that shit, you know, no insurance. Like there's none of that shit in there. It's like you either make it or you die, right? And some people die with no jokes, right? And there's no beneficiary plans or nothing like that. There's a posthumous album, maybe, but, you know. And the other, it's a complete inverse. There's so much potential, right? Like it's so much unexplored. You know, I have a protege of mine. She has a line in one of her records where she says, I could talk about my pussy, but there's so much territory in female rap that hasn't been charted before. Right? Yeah. So there's all these frontiers, right? Just in her particular dimension, right? In her particular space, right? Of like, yo, we got so much uncharted territory, right? Whereas you compare that to biochemistry, it's like, we're kind of running out of, you know, things to cut up and dissect over here. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we can learn, put, you know, whatever. But so the case being, sorry for rambling, but the case is that, you know, rap has never had that formal institutional training with all of the things that you need at different steps to keep it and maintain it and keep it progressing. What has been keeping rap alive to a certain degree is money, superficial things. I mean, we still need grants, just like you all need grants. We just call them record deals, right? To pay for studio time, whereas you need to pay them for lab time and stuff like that. Because I think we were able to be more mobile and more portable, and fortunately, the technology that we need to do what we need to do is very low cost. It's very easy, you know, versus you all, which is like, I need a new scanning electron microscope and it's gonna cost me $1 billion, and can you please, you know? And then when you need a new like needle head or whatever that is called in electron scope, like that shit ain't like $5. You can't be in there just doing turntable moves on that shit, right? Like, so I think the parallels are very interesting, right? But I think if you can get the right person, maybe it's not me, maybe I'm the test for it, to find out how you can merge those things and find the complementary slots. Then I think that's the learning piece. That's the float all boats piece, right? I think that's like one of the goals for me being here, you know, is like I kind of have that intuition and also have the hard skills, and y'all got the intuition and some of the hard skills, and we can see the gaps in each other's spaces, and maybe there's a way to sync these things where some of the this surplus of potential that we have can get married over to you, right? And then some of that institutionalization can get married over to us.
With the institutionalization, with the goal to be having a rap degree in physics from MIT?
Yes.
Okay. Could you talk about that a bit?
So I don't want to put him on blast, so I'm not going to say it. But there's the next step for rap as a whole in a macro sense is like what's left for us to do. Entrepreneurially, I mean, we're highly successful, right? So that's kind of solid. We don't need your business school.
Right? You mean like making money?
Making money, building companies, entrepreneurially, even in a conceptual, on a making rap basis. Like each rap is a business. You know, literally each song that you put on an album is a business. Literally, it's a business, right? There's partners, there's contracts, you know, there's IP, there's everything that's in a startup is there. So each album is 10 startups or 12 startups, right? Yeah. And we're successfully managing and launching these things, right? And, you know, so the next step for me, or from what I noticed the past few years, has always been academia, right? And so you'll see like rappers of note, and I'm talking about rappers. So I'm not talking about like, you know, anthropologists or people who went to school for music, or, you know, they went the academic route of music. So they got their master's and their PhD, and they came back and they taught a music class, right? And maybe they were a concert pianist, maybe they weren't, right? Maybe they're just a music theorist, whatever. They like to play in a band, but they never entered the industry in any kind of significant way. Yep. No shade, but really, right? Yep. Versus like, oh, Jay-Z's teaching a class on rap at fucking Princeton, right? That's way different than like Professor XXX, who you've never heard of. You look at his CV and it's like, he's teaching a hip hop class at what? You know, it feels different. It feels different when Einstein is teaching a class on nuclear physics.
Exactly.
You're like, oh shit, Einstein is teaching, you know?
Yeah.
So now you got the Einsteins moving into academia. You know, the Einsteins of rap moving into academia. And I think that is maybe, again, we have all this potential, and maybe in that cloud of potentiality, academia sits in there, and we're achieving it now. You know, so there's rappers coming in as fellows in different schools. So my friend D1 is going to be a Nas fellow at Harvard this year, and the Nas fellowship has been around for years, but it's always been academics or folks who are professors or scholars working within rap, maybe at a social level or anthropological level, but not necessarily performers of note, right? Whereas now you got performers of note coming into these spaces. There's guys and gals kind of sprinkling all over the place. They're just kind of like, oh, you're teaching at, oh wow, I didn't know you were teaching at such and such university. Like, yeah, I got a class, you know, this little thing there, you know. And somebody else is the. Then I'm here at MIT in the MLK fellowship, and so it's just kind of like, this is the move, right? This is the next you know, and there's folks building whole schools of rap, you know, outside of any traditional academic spaces, still partnering in some capacities. The work that's being done at SOSA is like of its own. Like it's I'm next few years I'm looking for a campus, you know, not for a campus to be invited to, like a bare field that we're gonna build a castle on, you know, and we're gonna be, you know, SOSA's gonna be MIT of rap, you know, in a real way. So I think that's happening. I think it's part of the arc of the macro of rap as a whole, moving from the parks to the industry and getting really fucked over, then learning, becoming a teenager, becoming a young entrepreneur, becoming a wizened business person, then moving into its academic phase, right? And then beyond that, you know, maybe it's its philanthropic phase. I don't know. Maybe it solves the world's problems in a serious way.
Damn, there's just a lot of things to ask you. Okay, I'll just run through whatever I can think of first. One of them is, so there's Berklee College of Music down the street, kind of much different place than MIT, but obviously, like, you know, musically focused. Why is it important that you're here at MIT or at Harvard instead of at a place that's traditionally more music bound?
I've been to Berklee, I think once, maybe. I have some friends I have a friend who went through Berklee, and Berklee has a strong hip hop core and tradition there. I actually think Curtis Blow is a fellow there in some capacity, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to misspeak. Apologize if I have. But it's there. It's a reference point. It has a core. I'm sure they got hip hop classes there. You know, most conservatories of note have a hip hop piece. Even MIT has a hip hop piece, right? And then other kind of ancillary things. For me, it's not about music for the sake of music, right? For me, it's about music or rap for the sake of, it's not rap for the sake of rap. It's rap for the sake of what it can do next, right? Outside of its comfort zone, right? So you go to Berklee and you can be very comfortable, right? Because you know you're gonna be rapping, right? And you're not gonna get hit with a math equation, right? And have to express what you're doing mathematically, right? Or you're not gonna get hit with, you know, what's the cognitive model? Maybe, but maybe you will get hit with, like, what's the cognitive model? What's happening? I'm sure there's musical cognition and stuff like that there. But I think just from a reputational standpoint, like, they do music. MIT's not known for music. You know, so somewhat of a challenge even to, like, this uncharted territory was like, I could go to Berklee and teach a class on rap, or I could go to Caltech and teach a class on rap. Which one you want to do? Right? It's like, fuck, I want to lose big. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to lose very, very big. I want to fall from the highest heights. You know, I don't want to fall from the first floor. I want to fall from the 19th floor. Unapologetically doing backflips the whole way down on a failure scale. And if it wins, I want to win big. You know, I want to win at the highest. You know, I want the class to be of Nobel Prize caliber kind of pieces in a real way. You know, I don't want another Grammy. You know, I don't want another Billboard Music Award. I want rap to have a Nobel Prize. You know, and where are they cooking the Nobel Prizes? You know, I walk through my humanities department where I'm stationed, and every day there's 9 Nobel Prize winners on the wall. You know, it's like, the Grammy was the application to get in, right? To leave successfully, we need a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, you're talking down like it's like the economic people or whatever. Yeah, I walk past it all the time to the piano room. Yeah,
you know,
it's like, all right, this is cool. Could you talk about the differences? So, like, from my perspective, these things. So rap and kind of so you're like rap, then like math and physics, that sort of stuff. Both are really complex. I understand this stuff reasonably well. I don't feel like I understand rap very well, but I enjoy it. Like it's something that you listen to and you feel it, but I don't understand why is that happening. But there's just a lot of complexity in both areas, and the question is, how similar do you think that these are at kind of a technical level?
I mean, I look at it's very, I keep things very simple. It's just macros and micros, right? And then managing expectation. And then, so there's 3 frames. There's the creation of the work or the problem set. Then there's the managing expectations, right? Which is kind of in with the creation, kind of overlap, because you're creating based on solving for X. You're making decisions, right? But you don't know what those decisions, how they're going to play out until you put it into the world. And then you're at launch, and then people are interpreting. And then there's a cycle, because now you're going to survey what they've been interpreting, and you're going to feed that back into your creative pool. And you're going to create work, and then you're going to make decisions on that work, launch that work. They're going to consume that work, and it's going to come out. In that, it's just components. Like, here's the basic components. What can you do with them? Right? For all of kind of high tech, it's here's some electricity. What can you do with it? You know what I'm saying? Like, here it is. Here's different ways you can get to it, right? Here's the different ways to produce it, right? But okay, what's most important? What you do with it. I mean, clouds produce electricity, right? They, like, we're done here. If it was just that, and you ain't gotta do nothing. But can you produce on demand? Then it becomes a problem set. It's like, oh yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, we can produce it on demand. It's like, oh wait, we got all this. Look at this. All this like comes at a cost. So you got to manage kind of the cost. Okay, cool on the back end. But then it really becomes like, well, what the fuck are you gonna do with it? That's when it becomes of interest, right? Generation is one thing, and that's cool, but it's pretty much you can almost automate that now. And in some cases, it is, right? It's like maybe 4 or 5 people walking around this power plant at any given time, and they're just doing like, okay, let me write down that the dial today was this, But the work is this, like, I'm spinning, I'm going, it's this machine. But then it becomes down the line, literally down the power line. What are you doing with it? How are you using it? So you got this big macro electricity. What are you doing with it? Rap, this is big macro language. Right. Of all the languages as a whole. What are you doing with it? Right? What can you make it do? Right? And then let's get real particular. Okay, I built this circuit that's able to take it in like this, but first it went through this converter, and it converts it, steps it down to a usable voltage, and then I got this circuit that makes it do this, that arranges this way, right? And that circuit to me is basically just like a style, right? So you got this style, and then here's my style, right? Here's some East Coast boom bap. And I'm going to take language, and I'm going to run it through East Coast boom bap. And this is that's what that circuit's going to make it do. Yeah. Here's some resistors and some capacitors and some other components, da, 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 da. And so it's the more components that you have, right? And the more kind of materials that you have, the more you can do with the electricity, right? The more styles that you have, right? And the more it's really just the more words that you have, literally the amount of different words that you have, the more you can do, the deeper stories you can tell, right? The more detailed story you can tell, right? The more you can that thing that unknown of you, like it does something to me. I don't know what it is. The more that I can make it do other things that you don't make you do other things that you don't know what to do, right? Because it's literally making you do something, right? Absolutely. It's making you feel a thing, right? A nice, well-defined kind of circuit will make you do all kinds of shit. It'll make you die in certain cases, right? Right? In other cases, it'll make you feel really good. It'll make you. It's meant to impact the human condition. That's where they align. Everything that we do is meant for who? For us, for humans, right? And is there other thing meant for other entities? Yeah, it's like, no, that's for trees, right? And then this is for fish, and then this is for this, and this is for that. But they good, right? To a degree, as long as we don't fuck them up, right? Like they can manage on their own, right? But I think the majority of it is for us, right? Even if it's for us to know that we're doing something to help the fish, it gives us greater powers to help whatever that technology is, right? Using electricity to help fish, right? But for our own benefit. Why we want to help the fish? Because we don't want them to die. Why? Because all the fish die, we ain't got nothing to eat.
Right.
You know, if these trees die, we ain't got no oxygen. You know, we're dead, right? So even in the grandest of, you know, altruistic goals, it still feeds back to us. Right? And I think something about that feedback cycle is what we share. Right? And that we just on the end of language, because it's language, it's different from electricity, but it still needs to run through the same process. It still needs circuits, it still needs step-down converters, it needs these other kind of components the same way that we just don't call them that. Right? We may call it dumbing it down. You know what I'm saying? Like we need a dumbed down converter, right? Because this word is way too big and nobody's going to understand that. It's too much. Yeah. So is there a word that expresses that same idea? And because I don't have that much time, right? I got 3 minutes. This word is going to take up, by itself, is going to take up a second and a half. And it's very, 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 very focused. Too focused. It's over-focused. I need something that's a little bit more vague, shorter, compact, more power. Need that. So even we are on Moore's law, subject to it, right? So we need to get that transistor small to the word that has the maximum impact with the most meaning. Right. And then I need to pop that into my circuit. And now 3 times the work for half the price.
Along this idea of electricity or analogy to electricity, a lot of the stuff that we work with, you have some fundamental laws. Like there's the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Electricity, like all you really have, you have a power source, and then there's 4 things. There's a resistor, capacitor, inductor, and it's called a memsistor. Memsistor. Yeah. Okay.
Don't forget the wires.
Wires are important. I mean, you could just say like wires are just resistors with no resistance. But anyways, so you have these 4 things, whatever, fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Are there equivalent things? Like, are there like fundamental laws for rap? Like, do you have like a set of like, could you list, like, is there like a, handheld number of things that is the foundation for all the stuff you do? Or does it not really work that way?
No, it does. I mean, there's beyond just electricity. So stepping outside, we got electricity, which is there, and here's these other components underneath it, right? That we use to harness it, right? So you got language, and what do we use to harness language, right? Yeah. And so it'll be like, oh, we got metaphor off top, king metaphor, right? Which it's a micro macro. It serves both because you have under metaphor, you have all these other branches of things. So you have like simile, right? Which is used a lot in rap, right? This micro function of metaphor. You got metonymy, right? You got personification. You got trying to think of things that are like maybe direct parallels. You got cadence, which may feel like cadence, maybe the wires. So the directions, like where's it going? So it's like these flows. Cadence is like how I'm saying it, which to me mimics how the electricity is getting to this and moving across this interface or whatever. So yeah, they're there. Like I could give you. That's why I say I could give you like 4 or 5 things. If a biochemist had these 4 or 5 things, and then was looking at all of the other kind of branches that branch out of those 4 or 5 main ideas and get into the micros, you could, given enough time and practice, the way whatever master you have in biochemistry, you can have somewhat of the same kind of mastery, right? Just by embracing those principles, right? Those kind of fundamental components. So yeah, they're there. I think you should get resistors, capacitors, memistors, and yeah.
Why do you know what a memesistor is?
I'm silly, man.
Dude, it's like I'll just throw random shit at you, and you're like, oh yeah. I'm like, man.
Here's the difference. I'm aware of it. Could I pick one out if you put them shits in front of me in a box? Like, no way I wouldn't be able to point out a memestor, right? But I took electronics in high school, so I got a little bit of I kind of know what that does a little bit. I kind of need to know what I'm talking about a little bit, but I couldn't build one for you, no fucking way.
They used to be, those in particular used to be like purely theoretical until like a few years ago when someone built the first one. But
I forgot. I didn't read the paper. But what is it called? Anyway, I watched Computer File.
Oh, dude, that's
number file.
awesome.
So there you go. I know what a memestor is because I watched Computer File, and the guy was working on scan electron microscope, and he mentioned memestor, and I was like, oh, what's that?
Yeah, maybe this is something I could put at the beginning of that minute whiteboard thing that I was telling you about, because it seems like kind of what you do is there's like language, which is similar to electricity, and then you use your fundamental tools to kind of craft the story you want to get across into this. You kind of funnel it down through into this meaningful 3-minute rhythmic message. Do you think at all about the difference between rap and other forms of information transfer? Like rap feels like a really efficient and emotional system of information transfer.
Oh yeah, to me it's data compression, right? And it fundamentally observes and expresses all of the rules of data compression, right? Was it lossless? It's in my notes. I got a ton of notes, but it's like lossless. Yeah, like lossless data compression, right? And so that's why once you look at it like that, if you can say, then it opens up the whole field. And then you start to realize that, oh shit, there's a whole like field of data compression and everything that goes into that just one frame, right? Or you can look at it as, psychology, right? And then, oh shit, there's this whole field of like psychology that relates to right? And all of it builds onto what you do. So it's like you're almost starting at the end, and then you turn around and you look back and you're like, oh my God, here's all these fields that relate to what I do, are directly correlated to what I do, right? Explicitly, right? So yeah, it's super efficient. It is yeah, it's super efficient. It's hyper efficient in some capacities, right? What limits it is it's still language bound, right? So if you listen to some rap in Mandarin and you don't speak Mandarin, you're not gonna know what's going on. But what's good is that it still maintains its shape across like linguistic barriers, right? So there's so much work put into the shape of rap, right? And how it feels, right? And how it comes across and how it's metered, and like, when you're listening to a rap, right? So you can listen to somebody speaking Bengali, or somebody speaking Tamil, or somebody speaking Tibetan, or somebody speaking, I don't know if Tibetan is the name of the language. Apologize if it isn't. But you get somebody speaking Japanese or somebody speaking French Canadian, and when they're rapping. When the rapping has started, right? Because they slip into a shape, which has been very well curated and formalized, right? So even if you can't understand the micros of what they're saying, you get a gist of the feeling, right? And some people who even listen to rap in English, who understand it in English, they don't know what the fuck is happening. They don't understand the micros. It's like,
sure, yeah.
But they hear the shape and they feel the shape, right?
I'm pretty sure I'm in that camp. Yeah.
Maybe. You seem like a smart guy. Thanks. But no, so it has that. So even what it lacks in, and that's even that kind of constraint, it still has a certain correction because it's able to maintain its shape. So it doesn't get completely dissolved, right? Which is great, because in that capacity, it's a really, really great container, right? A really, really distinct container. And kind of not only is it a form of kind of data compression, that it's also a standard. It also sits up there as it's USB. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody got USB. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And we all agree that this is rap. Japan, you agree? Like, yeah, with this, that's rap. China, agree. Yeah. Australia, Africa, we all agree. Yeah, that's rap. Okay, cool. Yeah. So here's USB, everybody. Or here's JPEG, everybody. Like, here's this standard. When you see it, that's just what it is.
Yeah, standard data format.
So it's a format and a function.
Right. Do you think it would be possible to have something that you'd identify as rap? This might be a stupid question. Probably is. Is there a way to have rap that doesn't have language involved in it? I'm not sure if that means no speaking or if it means no sound. I'm not sure. But is there something that you would identify as rap that there's no kind of vocal component to it?
Yeah. We've ran experiments. We've tried. There's things. You have to kind of go through so semiotics is what gives us validity.
And what's semiotics?
So semiotics is the study of signs and symbols to dumb it all the way down. Shout out to the semioticians out there whose head just exploded. Like, no, you son of a bitch! No! Why is he at MIT? But so just study of signs and symbols to keep it real basic, super basic. But one of the key lessons of semiotics, that's where you get I can't even remember this. I feel so bad. I didn't expect to be talking about semiotics today. This where you get sign and symbol and indexicality, icon. You get these. What's the? Oh my God, I'm gonna die. They're gonna kill me. But anyway, the grand lesson that for me that comes out of semiotics is, you get the signifier and the signified, right? So that kind of language is born out of semiotics, right? Semiotics kind of pushes you to look at the world as text, right? And if you start to look at the world as text, then everything becomes a communication, right? So buildings, trees, they're all just signs and symbols of something, right? A tree is just a sign that there's water, right? There. Because if there was no water, there would be no trees, kind of a thing, right? Cactuses are like, there's a little bit of water, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a little bit of water over here, right? There's intermittent water here, right? But don't get it confused. This place will flash flood overnight and then be back to desert in the morning. So be wary of this. So it's really, and then buildings, are another. Here's a textual example, right? Here's a building. What's this? Oh, that means that there's civilization. There's people there, right? There's some commerce taking place. There's versus no skyscrapers, right, of any note. And it's like, well, what's going on here? Maybe it's just residential, right? So maybe there is not a lot of business going on here, so I wouldn't expect there to be all these other things that come with business, and then maybe all these other things that come with residentiality, right? So it's just looking at the world as text and a message, reading the world like a book, right?
So everything's telling you something.
Everything's communicating something to you, right? And in the way that we talk about having a conversation. So like I'm having a conversation with you in a particular English language, right? But even if we weren't talking and we just communicated through gestures, it may not be the most resolute of things. Like the resolution will be really, really low. It'll be a lot of loss, right? Very lossy. Is that what this is?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would just be like, see, just gesturally, we can't help but communicate. Yeah. How we read it and translate it is still founded on some type of grammar, some type of syntax. But to Noam Chomsky's point, shout out to MIT, it's generative, baby. You feel me? So yes, I can look at, if I choose to say, I'm going to look at world as text, what type of text? I'm gonna look at it as a sonnet. I'm gonna filter it through a sonnet. I like to put netic on the ick on the ends of things to make it sound like fancy. I'm gonna look at it through a sonnetic frame, right? Or I'm gonna look at it through a rap frame, right? I'm gonna look at this as a rap. And so this building is this metaphor, and this building is that metaphor, and then the building is this metaphor. It's not as flowy, right? It's not as continuous as a rap, but there's very blocky rap. There's very kind of like hard, blocky rap. But yeah.
Do you have any, is this something that you're going to work more on in the future?
Yeah, it'll be in the course for sure. It almost feels like karate, like a karate master was like, fight without fighting, like some Bruce Lee shit, right? It was like, write a rap without writing it, or take these objects and write a rap. So the closest parallel, which is actually really successful, is writing raps with emojis, all emojis. And the hard part isn't because they're emotion. They're just, here's these symbols of emotion, which is what words are. They're just symbols to represent emotions, instructions, right? The issue is textually is like making it flow. But you can solve that with meter. So it's like, here's the timing points. Here's the punctuation. Stop here. Like really respect, but you have to respect the punctuation. Like that's a comma. I need you to pause for like 2 seconds. And then I need you to pick back up, right? So it's really temporal issues. But in terms of like telling a story without using words, yeah.
Is the idea there that you see a smiley face and literally like think to yourself happy, or do you just let yourself feel like, oh, that's a smiley, like I feel happy, and just kind of
you gotta create these compounds, so to speak. Like very simply, you could do like take a smiley face, and then you could find the emoji for somebody eating, and then you could put the smiley face and the eating emoji next to each other. And then what do you think that is? Think rap. I want you to think very, very rap.
I just think of it like, I can't escape like the sports of just like you're eating, like, like football, like running back, like he's eating, like Ezekiel Elliott, like you're eating, you're doing good, like you're killing it.
But you got to put the smiley emoji in it. It's a compound.
And what was the next one? Eating?
So you got,
or just food.
You got the eating emoji, whatever emoji would be like that represents eating something, right? Yeah. And then you put the smiley emoji to keep your, what you brought into it. You keep the smile emoji there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then let's put another element to it before the eating emoji. Let's get the eye emoji, right?
Yeah.
So we got eye emoji, eating emoji, smile emoji. So it's like, for on a rapper point of like purely self-referencing rap, it'll be 8 smile, which is like 8 Mile, which is like Eminem, right? And then I put the I because it's like I 8 smile. Then it's like, okay, we got that. Okay, what can I do now that I have that?
Yeah,
I got this Eminem reference. I got this. I'm successfully deploying and like subverting the emoji. I've literally combined them. So I 8 smile. You can silence that S a little bit, but it's still there because it's kind of funny. Yeah. But then it's okay, now let's build. And that becomes like the trick. It takes some, don't get me wrong, it takes some time and it's going to take some permutation. It's going to take a little bit of, and maybe even some post kind of exposition to really sort out some of the bullshit that you just pulled, because it's pure bullshit. I don't want you to think that it ain't. It's definitely identifying and stretching, but can it be done? Yes. And can I make it rhyme? Yes. Because I need to find, if 8 smile is that piece, I need to find the emojis that would get me to a rhyme that would be ape, pile, right? I'm on my 8 Mile shit, right? So I put the shit emoji at the end of the smile emoji. So then we gotta find am or I'm. So what's that? I'm. Yeah, you got that. So I could do the with that emoji. That one. So I'm on. Then I could do on, but there's the on emoji for the light switch. So I'm on. We got my. So we gotta find. Well, I'm on that. You could do a hat emoji, but then we gotta figure out something that's a T without using the letter T. So it could be I'm on hat, I'm on mine, I'm on that 8 Mile shit. I'm on hat 8 Mile shit. And then maybe just solve. We gotta solve for T. So it's I'm solving for X. Right?
Damn. It's just crazy to watch you, just because like your fluidity is turned up so high relative to what I'm at most of the time. And I'm like reasonably capable dude, but it's just not the way I can think about things 95% of the time. But like, it's just amazing how like that factor on you is just like, all right, look at that hat, like you just running through it. And I think you were running through like boxing, oxygen. It's just like, it's just really, have you always been, I don't know if this is the way that all rappers are, or if it's just the way that you are because you're so grandmaster level, but have you always been able to do what you just did, or is this the product of decades and decades of practice? Like, what the hell, man? Like, that's not normal. At least I don't think that's normal. Maybe it is normal and I'm just stupid.
There's people that are better than me at it, which is scary.
Really?
Yeah, there's guys that'll do that shit in moments. Not minutes, moments. Even though I just kind of did it in a moment, it'll be like, but then some of them are liars too, because they'll already have,
they did it before,
and they'll come in just like, let me think.
Yeah.
Then they spit this.
Yeah, then wham.
It's like, you're a liar. But I mean, I always told stories, and I always told them on the fly. And I remember being a kid, there were lies. They're complete lies just to kind of fit in, right? Like, yeah, I was watching TV last night and they had this thing with this Manus on there, and that Manus, he went and he ripped off the thing. And I may have seen something about a Manus, but it wasn't that deep. It was like every day when I came to school, I needed a new set of lies to tell to make myself fit in, right? And that was my compensating for whatever, right? Because I hated school. So I've always had that part of like, I need to come up with a story real quick. And I remember being on the school bus, and my friends were like, yo, tell me a story. And it's kind of like, okay, let me make up some shit real quick. And it would go. And I don't remember how good the stories were or whatever, but it was like, here's the story. Or it was always about hyperbole. Like, here's some fantastic thing that happened. But the killer of it was that my life outside of school was bananas. Like, my dad was an engineer. He was a Green Beret. He was a martial arts master. He had all these toys and games and gadgets and all this other stuff. An instrumentalist. He used to have we used to come home. My dad would play the bagpipes and shit, right? And then my mom was like a seamstress and was a sewer and kept this collection of like National Geographics and books and all that shit. So I would be seeing like the world in the ghetto. I would be seeing like the world through all these books, and then the like stuff through my dad would introduce us to all these like Asian Eastern cultures and all of the stuff that goes in there. And so I would go to school, right, preloaded with all of this wild shit, right, that nobody would believe that a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, even my teachers, they couldn't believe that that's what was happening at home. You know, that I would go home and have like a bazooka at home, right? Like a real,
and that's not a lie.
Not a lie. Like my dad, Army Navy surplus store, had like dummy rounds from like mortars or like, you know, defunct RPGs, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you got an RPG, we got a bazooka. Just imagine you as a kid going to school and like, yeah, I got a bazooka.
No.
Kids were like, get the fuck out of here, right?
Yeah.
But like, yo, my dad was Superman. And I'm like, yo, my dad was Superman. And they'll be like, no, he's not. Like, yeah, he is. I just seen him reach into a boiling pot of water and pull a rock out with his bare fucking hands. It's like, no way. So even though I was telling little lies, the truth would be just as ridiculous, you know, at that age. So anyway, to answer the question, I always told stories. So, and I had some of those stories I had to make up on the fly, right? And so I don't know if I was getting trained into kind of thinking a little bit quicker, I had to kind of think a little bit faster ahead of what was going on. I know how it's happening now. And I don't know what's happening kind of cognitively, or at least theories of what that is, flow state and all these other kind of things. And then the different parts of the brain that are actually, you know, basically turning off and turning on, you know, how your kind of like executive functions relax. So your memory can just go fucking wild. And it's like, hey, everybody stop. Make a rap about that. But then I also know how to be like, noise.
You're just letting it rip.
And then recursion becomes like, you only learn so many words. There's only so much grammar inside of you. You're not like this fucking endless supply of words, my God. So it's like at a certain point, even if you go wild, it's still going to form some type of semantic sense, or it's going to sit on some type of syntactical frame that's going to make this make sense when I kick back in.
Gotcha.
Right? So both of them are there happening, you know. So yeah, a little bit. I can get into a little bit of what's that movie? Beautiful Mind Mode. Oh yeah. Without the schizophrenia, you know, or maybe with the schizophrenia. I don't know, but definitely not with the hallucinations. But I can dip into that very quickly, right? And just kind of riff on an idea and just be walking around the house for 30 minutes, just like. Or here's this rap, you know.
Is there anything that helps you get into this state, like coffee, alcohol, drugs, like anything like that, or is it just omnipresent with you?
Nah, I never took any drugs. Don't drink. I think it speaks to the richness of someone's upbringing, right? The richness of my upbringing was my dad being an engineer, was all this just kind of latent technicality around, you know. And you know, my mom, you had all this just kind of latent intellectualism just sitting around, right? It wasn't active, right? But it was there. I mean, we had collection. I used to read the encyclopedia because it was there. If I didn't have an encyclopedia there, I wouldn't have read the encyclopedia, you know. I'm I remember actively listening to Bach and Beethoven and like jazz and all of that stuff. Just, oh, it's brain food for children, right? But then I was like, but I know this music already because it's in all my cartoons, right? It's the score for all my cartoons. So it's like, oh, okay, all right. So you're already primed. But then it becomes, okay, after you have that priming, that latent stuff, when does it become active? How do you activate it? Who activates it? Are you leaving home and going to a school system that's activating that stuff, or is it suppressing it? Or is it actively suppressing it to one degree? Or is it just kind of like preparing you for things where that stuff is quote unquote irrelevant, right? So, majority of our school systems, no matter where we were, you could be in a hood, you could be in in the suburbs, whatever, they were preparing you for a certain level of industry, a certain level of behavioral kind of industry. Wasn't necessarily preparing you to be a theoretical physicist. That's in the greatest schools in the greatest parts of town to the worst schools in the worst parts of town. It was very specific kind of goals for you. What kind of complicated those goals was, your parents or your social structure, your, the expectations of where you were, right? And who you knew to have a certain thing, right? Or attenuated it in a certain direction or another. So for me, I think back to my base, the pool that was there when I think back as a child was National Geographic. It was manuals about, electronics, and it was physical objects that were foreign, that probably only existed in the entire town that my dad lived in. I'm pretty sure he was the only one with a set of bagpipes, right? And if he wasn't, he was definitely probably the only person with a set of bagpipes and a sitar and tablas and a djembe and a scimitar and, like weapons. And he made me a bomb vest for Halloween one day. And I was like, I shouldn't wear that to school. Like maybe this is a bad idea. Like, he's a weapons specialist in the military. So that's why. Not just saying, that was that thing. So he would make the wildest costumes. And then one of the costumes he made was like, he's this mad bomber. And I was like, nah. So when I think back and I pull from things to talk about,
yeah,
that's what I know. And I'm sure other folks who had whose dad was probably a physicist and their mom was probably a physicist, and they're gonna know math when they think back to their childhood. And I'm like, okay, when I go to MIT or if I go to Caltech or whatever, they're like, man, this guy is just like, dickhead. How do you think like that? And like, my home was full of math books. Both my parents are physicists and mathematicians. This is it's not how I'm doing it. This is all I know. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I am. I think I have a myriad of, my background is myriad. My dad was a polymath. And, when I think back to my roots, what I remember is like all this wild, extra, interconnected diversity of shit, And so when I come to rap or I come to spaces like this, oh yeah, I know. Yeah. And the things I don't know, I'm like, oh, another sitar. Let me go play with that, or but bagpipes in the form of epitaxy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's
absolutely.
like, because I'm used to having foreign objects and foreign ideas around to jump into.
Do you have any advice for younger people who might not have, the parent who's a physicist, and one parent physicist, one parent's a mathematician? It certainly wasn't my case. There's a lot of cases that are worse than my case. Mm-hmm. Advice for people who maybe, would get around to watching this and they say, damn, I want to be like Lupe. I don't have the right environment for it.
Don't be like Lupe.
Oh, no?
Be better than Lupe.
I want to be better than Lupe.
Yeah.
Advice for him. Obviously, there's a wide spectrum of people here, but
yeah, I mean, you have to first what's the word I'm looking for? I was gonna say reorganize, but there's a smarter word than that. Reassess your constraints, and that think about it from how you can use your constraint versus how your constraint limits you. Because limiting isn't a problem, right? Limitations are actually good, right? If you can master what that limitation is limiting you to, right? So if all it gives you is oranges, you say, oh, all I can do is make this orange juice. Life gave me lemons, all I can make is this lemonade. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, maybe if he gave you a whole lot of them, maybe you can like distill some type of acid out of that shit, right? That can be used as some type of drill to like drill a hole into the next room using nothing but acid. Maybe you can make an acid drill out of that shit, right? Or maybe there's something about the materiality of the rinds to a certain degree that you can maybe, I don't know, I really don't know, but it's like maybe you can make a bulletproof vest out of them shit. It's like, I don't know, weaponizing things, but it's like maybe there's something deeper than just making juice, right? And it may seem like all I'll do is just make juice, right? But maybe there's something else that you can do, with that constraint and be imaginative and inventive about it, especially if that's all they fucking giving you. If all they're giving you is ghetto, then it's like, okay, how can I master the ghetto, right? And how can I like use it as this laboratory for all these different ideas, right? And physical things and stuff like that, right? And it's like, well, what is that gonna do? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'll jump really, really fucking high, right? From all I had was jumping over fences because the swings didn't work. Or maybe because there were no swings and all we had was the bars. Maybe I could become a gymnast, at a higher level because now I can use the thing as a fucking, like vault or a balance beam or whatever, fucking parallel bars or whatever. I'm riffing, I apologize. But the idea of like, here's your constraint, master your constraint. There's nothing wrong with that. Master that shit, like the back of your hand, right? I guarantee you that there's just as much information and useful data in your constraint than it is in the unconstrained. And that what's going to happen is you're going to look and you're going to come into this space and you're going to realize that all this shit is just constraints, right? It may be a constraint with a fancy title, like, I don't know, epitaxy, but at the end of the day, you're just growing shit.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. Just growing shit in a certain thing with a certain, you need to balance this and balance that. You're just cooking, right? If you're not a cook, then, you could be a chemist because that's all cooking is chemistry. Now let's put a different title on that. Let's not call it cooking anymore. Let's call it chemistry. And instead of giving you ramen noodles, right, I'm going to give you these kind of proteins, or I'm going to give you this type of, acid, or I'm going to give you this type of base, or I'm going to give you this other thing to kind of mix. And then don't just set it for 3 minutes. I need you to set it for 0.35 seconds with such and such. And then I'm going to give you, here's just a microwave, but now I'm going to give you this real high pressure environment to do it in. And then how does that change things, stuff like that. So I think if you master your basic constraints and master those kind of fundamental limits, and you recognize that everything else is just another set of limitations with just bigger, fancier names on it, that you'll be able to adapt and excel and progress, right, into any field, right? I think mastery of one field, and if you understand mastery, you can apply that understanding of mastery to another field. You're not going to be a master of that field yet, but you know what it takes to become a master of that field. So you know where to start. You know what's the bullshit, you know what's not, because you can always refer back to your mastery. But if all you've done your whole life is just sit in your constraint and just let your constraint constrain you and not pull anything from it or learn anything from it, then there's nothing to inform when you move around or you get put in a different position, right? Even in your own position, you can't excel, right? You can't move around because you've never mastered your own kind of constraint. And it could be a constraint that you put on yourself. Even if you're like, oh, I just hate myself. Like, master hating yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, master that shit so you can speak to it like deeply. Like, what does it mean? Like, oh, I'm a self-depressive, da 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 da, right? And when I get into these certain moods, I put myself and think like, oh, that's what makes me depressed. So now I can do it immediately, right? Right? I know what that is. Identify what that is. And then it becomes like, oh, I can control it. I can make this happen. Oh, shit. So, that's bad advice. It's terrible advice, especially to use it in that frame. But I think a lot of people that are going to come in and out of this school, well, I'm assuming a lot of this is for to a degree. You know, there's people that are going to come in here super depressed, masters of depression, right? That are using, hoping that this class is going to solve it or a way to get to hide it, right? Whatever class, right? As to make up for their own personal faults. They think that a degree in physics is going to make them a better person. And they think that, you know, as long as I can do that, then I'm good. And it's like, nope. You have to master being a person. You have to master yourself. You have to have a deep, honest understanding of yourself. That's what mastery is, a deep, honest understanding of that. Even if it's, the honesty is, I don't know what the fuck I am. Be a master of ignorance then, right? Like, be complete about all the things you don't know about yourself and write it down. So, yeah, I don't know this about one another. And it gives you at least a pathway, at least a proof to show your psychiatrist to be like, these are the things I don't know about myself. Yeah. And they're like, okay, cool. We'll work on these things, like step by step. So yeah, I think it's that, man. Not to be too cliche about it. I think it is. No matter where you are in the world, there's data, information, potential. There's limits. And then if you think that I'm going to get rich and that's going to solve my problems, it doesn't. Right? I'm going to get a degree and it's going to solve my problems. It won't. I'm going to get a job and it's going to solve my... It's not. Right? You're just going to have problems with a job. You know, you're going to be rich with problems. You have a degree with problems. You know? So if you're going to solve... If the whole goal is to learn how to solve things, like become a master physicist, solving the most complex problems in the world, because the most complex problem in the world is the human condition. Human happiness, being able to sit within yourself and be comfortable, self-contained, self-propelled, adding value to the world by you understanding the value in yourself.
I think that your points are good. I certainly feel targeted by what you said, you know, in a good way, in a helpful way. And I got involved in the physics PhD thing because it wasn't clear what to do, but it was like, all right, this is a hard thing to do. And at least, you know, you get a PhD in something and now you understand the whole pipeline up to a PhD. Yeah, now you can go to a different field if you need to. A corollary off that is society recognizes you as a master in physics, well, technically like a doctor in physics, if you have a PhD. And the path to being an expert in physics is very clear, or biochemistry. How do you, like, obviously you're a master or grandmaster at rap. I would say that. A lot of people would say that. But how do you know? Like, how is it known that you, like, what makes a master rapper compared to, because you can have rappers that have millions of views on YouTube, but it's shitty songs. You're like, oh, why the fuck is this up here? Like, are you kidding me? My song has 50,000 views and this has 10 million. Like, what's going on there?
I mean, they're a master of their audience, right? Somebody has a mastery of audience participation, and somebody doesn't, right? So there's that kind of trade-off, right? Where did you focus your skill sets on? You know, I focus my skill sets on getting a lot of people to come to my concerts. That's what one person might say. I focus my skill set on getting a lot of people to watch my videos on YouTube, right? Not necessarily bending words and coming up with emoji raps. You know, good luck with that, Lupe, you know. I mean, I think there's a certain peer-to-peer thing that is probably very primal in other fields. Man, rap is still just 40 years old, right? You think of something like physics, which is when we started, 400, 500 years old. You know, astronomy even deeper, right? And I think in some of those primal stages, it might have just been peer-to-peer. You know, like Galileo said, "What's up?" You're like, oh man, tell him I said, "What's up?" You feel me? You know, probably a little bit more, definitely more institutionalized than that. But just giving the example, right? You had the people in the field doing the stuff, giving each other their kudos, referencing each other's work, and that was it. You know, and then you go get burned at the stake kind of, and all your work gets burned, right? Kind of a thing, because it's heretical. Or questions the nature of God, and you're like, what? No. So I think some of it, I think where it was at a certain point, it's that peer-to-peer understanding that you have skill, and you have skill above and beyond the mass, right? And some of it is like the people who got on the train early got to focus on all of the primary functional stuff and got a mastery of that. And then they became the influence point for everybody beyond a certain point. And then that's one kind of piece. Like, you influenced a whole chain of things. You might have just did one or two things, right? But those one or two pivotal moments became foundational principles for everything after that, right? And then people tacked on, but they always cited you. So we do have a deep history of citation in rap, in reference. And you can go back to, oh, such and such did that first, or such and such did that second, or such and such did it more refined, or he built upon that theory and kind of made it a little bit more robust. So we have that, very similar. From an awards side, like a Nobel Prize type thing, we still don't have that. We still rely on pre-existing institutions to provide us with little spin-offs of theirs, right? Versus having our own kind of generated piece. But I think that's coming. It's just finding out what to prize. Whereas Nobel Prize is it's not necessarily very specific, but it's like economics, right? And then there's some things like, did you move a certain needle in economics to a certain degree? And I think that's coming. And I think you'll be surprised who gets it, right? Because it'll feel just like legacy play for the famous person, right? Whereas Nobel Prize, nobody knows who none of them motherfuckers are, right? Like, unless you're in that field, you have no idea who this dude is, right?
For sure.
In rap, it'll be different, and it should be different, because the dudes who did it the best in rap are the most famous, right? They're known for doing that in a public space. So it may come across as like, oh, you're just giving awards to the dudes with the names. And it's like, no. Like, that dude or that woman was like influential to this degree, and you can map his or her kind of influence chain through this whole generation of folks, right? And that's why he got the thing. Now it's still just kind of like, pick your poison. Like, who's the best rapper? You say, who sold the most records? And it's like, well, Drake is the best rapper. Who's the most influential rapper? And you say, man, Lil Wayne had a generation of folks rapping like Lil Wayne, or Eminem. He has to this day, right? Has a bunch of folks rapping like Eminem. So maybe it's Eminem, right? And can that be built upon? Can it be topped? It's like, it takes years to figure out, right? Is there enough time and interest to maintain that? And is there enough valid survey to show? In academia, all academia, there's a number of citations, because work has to be cited. And it's like, yeah, we got 30,000 citations on this paper. That paper is the Eminem of papers, right? We don't have that system to that degree, only because the demand isn't there. The USB, I mentioned it kind of haphazardly, but I wish we had USB. Hopefully the idea that hopefully out of this next few block of years, as rap becomes more integrated into academia, we get to pick up the valid, like, very, I want to say validity, you have to cite your work. You have to, like, we created a standards body that says that if you want to put out a rap album and you want it to be officially recognized for this prize, then it needs to have this underwritten. It needs to have this stamp. And the only way you're going to get that stamp is it needs to have this, it needs to have that. The same demands that go into, a PhD or, wanting to get that particular thing. Really, really just to keep track of where the influence goes, right? So that when we do award that prize or that grant or whatever that may be, we can show like you've done the work. You went to this conference, you did this, you did that, you did this tour, you did that, you did this, you did that, you did this. You weren't just sitting at the crib and you got 10 million views on YouTube. But it's like, did you actually go put in the work? Can you track the work? And not just from an economic standpoint and financials, because I'm sure some of those Nobel Prize dudes, the most money they've ever seen in their lives and will ever see in their lives is from the Nobel Prize money, right? But some of them, right? And I bet some of them are probably still broke, right? And they're still like, I need a grant. And that Nobel Prize just helps them like, but okay, give them some money. You want a prize, And the same thing in rap, there's guys that are broke, guys that are super rich. There's guys that are really rich that are really, really good. There's guys that are really rich that are really, really whack. And there's folks that are really, really broke that are really, really whack. And there's people that are, broke that are really, and there's people that just work regular 9-to-5s that toe the line. So I think if we can have a JPEG, if at the very least generate a JPEG or a USB or some type of standards, underwriter laboratories or whatever, just to be like, and this is what that detailed, this society sets out the terms for this, and it's a society that's highly respected and, et cetera. I think we'll get to a good point where we can definitively start to, say like, hey.
And does rap need this more so than other genres of music, specifically because rap has this evolution mechanism that we talked about, where you're really, riffing and biting from a lot of other influences? Is that kind of where this comes from? Like, why wouldn't you need this for all types of music?
I think you could have it for all types of, I think it's a little different for other kinds of music. Excuse me. Because I think they have it already. Right? I think like, jazz has jazz conservatories. Point to me the hip hop conservatory. Where is it?
MIT soon.
Maybe, right? There isn't one, right? There is no, but what jazz had to do and the cost that it had to pay to get that is also something where it's like, I think that's a thing that kind of rappers, like, they want that freedom. Its freedom is directly tied to what it is, that RNA factor, right? Whereas jazz at a certain point became about standards. Can you play these standards? If you told every rapper that they had to learn this set of verses, and perform them as if they were their own, even though we sample and pull, there's still a big taboo on like, oh, you just rap such and such as verses.
Yeah,
you can do it in homage. But I mean, like, no, you went and made an album of covers. Rap is like, fuck that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's what's required to have Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. To have, I think, Jazz Conservatory or, Jazz at Lincoln Center or, Jazz Fest or what, like these recurring institutions that are all about the promotion and promulgation of jazz. And it's not necessarily about expanding the scope of jazz. It's about, it's a conservatory, conserving and preserving jazz in a very specific period of time with a very specific set of ancestors that are very specifically. And even if you are this new hot young trumpet player coming out of Berklee crushing it, you ain't getting it out of, you probably won't survive out of Berklee unless you know these standards, right? Because your gig entails you that when you go to perform at this whatever, they're going to want you to play standards. And you can riff on a standard, you can improvise, but you're coming back to take the A train, right? And if you can't get in there and take the A train, then it's like, my man, no, right? So that's the thing that I think rap will never solve.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's rap's problem either. I don't think it's to try and become jazz.
Right. It's a feature, not a bug.
I think it's like let's become what we are, and let's just take how do those frameworks of a conservatory, of a JPEG, of a Nobel Prize committee, of an IOC, right, of a Institute of Advanced Studies, of an MIT. What does that framework fit? And then how do we permutate it and deal with it? But we're going to have to pay for some things. There definitely is going to be some costs to it to get that type of formality.
Kind of creative costs, you mean, not money.
Creative costs, money, monetarily costs for sure. Money costs, like somebody's got to put $50 million into a campus. You know, somebody has to do it. It has to happen, right? And then, you know, I think the payoff is the longevity. You know, institution of physics way back in 15 whatever, right? Created a space where physics is going to be here for the next 1,000 years.
And this doesn't exist for rap yet because rap is so young. Is that right?
Rap is so young, but I mean, it's Moore's law. Like, we don't need that much. We don't need to have a big history to do things that create longevity, right? Or that substantiate us 200 years into the future. Like, we know what the lessons are. People have done it, right? So you can point back to the institutions and the societies that still exist, right? And say, we need that. What did they do? Okay, cool. We need that, right? Is it just an underwriting service? And then it's just a kind of be wild, but be wild within be able to do these certain particular constraints, which don't impinge upon your creative functions, but do them because we need them. We need you to fucking do this, please, right? Because we need that as reference to, like, go make this make sense and create a library and an archive and all this other stuff. So what's happening? Harvard has their hip hop archive. One of the goals here is my tenure here. I don't have tenure, ladies and gentlemen, but my time here. So to have some of that, like, where's MIT's archive? You know, where's MIT Records? Where is it? It's right here on my hat. God damn it.
Did you get that made?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
At the mall. At Lids. Shout to Lids. I need to sponsor this podcast.
No sponsors currently, so that'd be great.
Yeah, but it's you know, and you know, long story short.
Yeah.
Institutional longevity.
Yeah.
You know, and is it from an actual institution, a building, or is it is it just a more professionalized function within rap that requires a certain level of commitment to a set of standards with the goal of promoting and extending and expanding, but having a return point so it doesn't become too diluted?
I think I have an answer for this, so forgive me for asking it because it's not a great question. I mean, it kind of is.
But they don't know.
They might see this and be like, why the fuck did that kid ask that? What a fucking idiot. Probably happens anyways. But talking about setting up, you know, institute, conservatory, longevity, this kind of stuff. What do you say to someone who says, why do you need to do this? Like, rap is something that happens, you know, on the street, and kids do it in parking lots and at recess or whatever. Like, that's where rap lives, and then we get some great songs out of it, and you know, we don't need any of this stuff. What do you say to people who might say that?
What field are they asking from?
Just like a average schmo.
Average schmo,
Yeah.
or can we professionalize schmo a little bit? Give them a field.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone, I don't know. Does it matter? I guess
it does matter.
I would say okay. I guess a rapper probably wouldn't. Well, I guess maybe a rapper would say this. I don't know.
A rapper talking to another rapper.
Rapper, yes. Let's say rapper saying, "Dude, what the hell? Like, you don't need to go to MIT and be a fucking nerd. Like, let it live where it lives." What do you say to that?
So I've had that conversation.
Okay.
I have. So I have had it. It becomes this. It's like, why would you want to formalize it?
That's what they're asking you.
I mean, and I feel that's the nature of a little bit of the nature of your question. Not completely, but a little bit of it. Like, why do you need to go to MIT to learn how to rap?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And I would, you know, and my rebuttal would be like, where'd you learn how to rap? You know? And they'll say, man, I learned from the streets. In these streets. rapping, and it's like, okay. Have you ever made any money doing it? No. Majority is no. So let's take that one rapper represents the majority. The majority won't, and they never will. No matter what they do, they're gonna lose money doing it. Like, are you famous? I'm like, no. No one knows who I am walking around the campus, right? They're like, who the fuck is that? They have no idea, right? So even me, like, no.
Do you get have you gotten recognized around here? Oh yeah, okay.
But not as much as if, Bad Bunny was on campus and it's turmoil, right? It's not like that at all.
Okay.
Just a series of questions.
Yeah.
Are you this? Are you that? Are you that? Most of them are gonna be no. Right? And my rebuttal would be, well, if you're already no, if you're already not doing none of that shit here, you might as well go do none of that shit at MIT too. Right? So even if it's the lowest hanging fruit of complete failure or complete non-impact in your own field, right? In rap, then we might as well tack all of it. We might as well be everywhere felon. Right? That's one very basal, vulgar response, right? The other response is, we think that we learned all this on the fly and in the wild, but we didn't. Right? The people who formalized it around us, who make the most money from it, who receive the most financial gain, and who also receive the most power from it. They allowed you to live in Jurassic Park. You think it's wild. You think we're all dinosaurs and competing and T-Rexes and but you go just a little bit past that bush of palm trees or whatever it is, and it's a goddamn fence, right? And people are with viewing boxes, right? And this whole thing has been controlled the entire time, right? And even in that frame of control, let's master, again, back to my point about mastering your constraints. Let's master all the constraints. Let's master it. Let's we think that it's wild. It's actually really formal. The people who have formed it get the most out of it. The dinosaurs don't get paid at Jurassic Park. They don't even get fed. They get fed the other dinosaurs. Right? It's not a zoo. So it's like, and even though Jurassic Park isn't real, but that concept speaks the most to it. You think it's very, very wild, very, very loose, but it's actually very formed. So why don't we control a farm? Right? Why not? Why not have an ownership of how we form this thing if it's formed already? Right? And that was some of my response to in real life, where it was like, but actually it wasn't. I'm lying now. But I wish it was. It was less sophisticated than that. But now it's like, yeah, why don't we own the farm too in all its ways, right? So you have people who have record companies, right? Artists who run record companies. You have artists who have clothing lines, and artists who have, sponsorship deals, and artists who have gym shoes, and artists who have this. You don't have any artists that make microphones. That doesn't exist. Why not? Right? You have artists that are sponsored by companies that make microphones, but and they're like, well, let us deal with the microphones. It's like, why? Because you have other competitors. There's tons of other people who make microphones. They didn't say let you deal with the microphones. They went and made their own, specific to their craft, right? Specific to a very specific audience who make harmonica microphones, right? And the microphones that were just coming out the box from the major manufacturers, they were like, we have a very specific way that we do the blues, and we need a very specific microphone to do that. And so we're going to build them ourselves, right? Where's rap doing that? Right? Does rap own a factory? No. Right? Because we always think of rap as just an ephemeral product versus it actually having hard, substantive, things that can, because we don't think of it as that can present itself as a phenotype outside of itself into something physical. It's just this ephemeral practice, right? But it's like, no, like, my man, like, rap is that bottle. Rap, the world is text. Rap is that champagne. Have your own champagne company if you're gonna drink other people's champagne. Jay-Z did that, right? Right. Own your own, so, and not just own the bottle of champagne. Can we invest in the vineyard? Because I want to pick the grapes, right? And I want to understand the distillation process all the way through, the fermentation process. Apologize, right? So, loosely speaking, apologize. It's something about whoever comes up with a critique. Their critique is going to be just as invalid, right, as your critique of their space, right? A negative critique. Because you can say the same shit about physics. I can say the same shit that people say about rap. I can say about physics and neuroscience and all these other frames, right? There's going to be a certain level of applicable, like appreciative, applicable things that are happening in that space, and then there's a bunch of other shit that can't nobody use, but people just made up for themselves to have fun with, right? There's a neuroscientist here who teaches a course, and she was talking, it's on OpenCourseWare, and she was just talking about how, you know, some of her colleagues, they get really detailed about the specific neuron firing in the, you know, and she has respect for that because they're her colleagues. It's like, and it does this one firing and right?
Yeah.
And she's like, but whatever with that shit, basically. Like, what does it do in a macro?
Yeah.
Right? How can you use that in real life? You know? And yeah, maybe there is something to that, but in my case, no, I'm more focused on how those things express in mass, right? Zones versus the very, very minuscule components, right? And then I'm sure there's a range on the other side of the spectrum where somebody will critique her in the same way, like, well, I don't need to know how my brain works. I talk. I open my mouth and things come out. You know, I can't even access it if I wanted to, right? And we don't even know we know how it works, but we don't know if I eat 10 ounces of macaroni and cheese and then 4 ounces of broccoli and then 2 ounces of water, that's going to cause my prefrontal cortex to have a certain response versus if I ate 9 ounces of macaroni and cheese. Like, they don't, like, maybe the guy with the neurons is trying to figure that out. Like, what does 9 ounces of macaroni and cheese do to my, you know, my prefrontal cortex? But right now it's like, nah, man, like I eat macaroni and cheese and I fall asleep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just think it's levels to critique. I think it's levels of validity. And I think everybody has a certain level of validity. And I think everybody also has a certain level of invalidity, right? Like they're non-valid when they step outside of their space to negatively critique other fields for the same shit that's going on in their field, right? Rappers who rap that'll never make $1. It's like, well, why are you doing that? And it's like, because I love it. Shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm done here. When none of us talk about a physicist. Man, why are you doing that shit? You can't, ain't nothing. What you gonna do? It's like, man, I just love being in the lab, dog. I love this lab, man. You go fuck yourself. You feel me? Then you're done, right? Computer scientist, man, what you building a video game? Like, no, I'm not. Like, am I gonna be able to use that? But like, no. It only works on this one computer? Like, yeah, it only works on this one computer. I can't even pull this shit off of this computer. Like, why the fuck are you doing that? Because I love it. Makes me feel good. Gives me purpose.
That's why I said this is a stupid question, because that was already my answer to it. And I think that you had known that, but it was good to hear from you. Dude, I made it through like one of the 3 pages.
Damn.
I could burn so much of your time, but
no, we could do. Let's do a part 2. Because this is the beginning of me here at MIT. I'm still learning, still a baby, right? I think it's interesting to kind of double back maybe later.
I would love that.
And then like see how things have changed. Maybe some updates. Maybe I would have gotten kicked out by then. Maybe you would have gotten kicked out by then. You know, we never know.
I'm supposed to, I think me and you, graduate in a loose sense at the same time. So we'll check back on this in a few months. I should be out of here by next June.
Yeah.
So I think
right around the same time. So I think let's this is a thing. Yeah. Then let's see how things change over the year. I think it'll be great. So this time, you've just a pause, a comma. You know what I'm saying?
2 seconds. Mm-hmm. one last idea for you, kind of. Do you know what a Fourier transform is?
Do I know what a Fourier
transform?
Fourier transform? I have no idea what that is.
No worries. I think there's a computer file video of it, but it's the same idea of, and I'll just say it on piano because that's what I know. Like if you play a chord like D, F, B flat, you just play it, and the people that have perfect pitch can be like, oh, like D, F, B flat, like perfect. But it's just one bite. It's 3 separate waves collapsed and given to you, and that's kind of how I felt. Like I want to say so many, I think not adjectives, but so many words to you. Like thank you for coming out. It's been like inspiring. It's been like invigorating. It's been like really intellectual. Like there's so many words I want to send to you for coming on. But I don't have 5 minutes to just word blab at you.
So you're gonna hit me with the DFB flat.
There you go, DFB flat.
Oh, and it speaks to our semiotic piece, so maybe we end on that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right.